pocas universidades en el mundo llevan el nombre de todo un país. Esta es la Universidad de Chile. Su nombre es reflejo de una misión y un compromiso: guiar el desarrollo de Chile en conexión con los grandes desafíos globales. Investigamos el origen de la vida en laboratorios naturales únicos. Buscamos respuestas y soluciones para hacer posible un mejor futuro, sin importar las distancias ni los obstáculos. Somos la principal universidad del país y una de las más importantes de Latinoamérica. Formamos a los profesionales y especialistas que han construido esta nación y a intelectuales que han trascendido nuestras fronteras como referentes internacionales de la ciencia, la cultura y las artes. Unidos en esta diversidad de paisajes, colores, personas e ideas, construimos una comunidad sin fronteras. Trabajamos desde Latinoamérica en alianza con las principales universidades y centros de investigación del planeta. Una comunidad vinculada con el mundo, la universidad, donde se vive la experiencia de todo un país.
Facultad de Gobierno y el Instituto de Estudios Internacionales les da una cordial bienvenida a este encuentro con el señor Albert Ramdin, 11º Secretario General de la Organización de los Estados Americanos, quien realiza su primera visita al país tras asumir recién en mayo esta relevante misión. En el inicio de este encuentro, saludamos a las autoridades presentes. Señor Albert Ramdin, Secretario General de la Organización de Estados Americanos, OEA. Profesor Leonardo Letelier Saavedra, Decano de la Facultad de Gobierno. Profesora Dorotea López, Directora del Instituto de Estudios Internacionales. Profesor Cristian González Villó, Vicerrector de Investigación y Desarrollo. Honorable diputada Erika Ñanco Vázquez. Profesora Verónica Figueroa Huencho, Presidenta del Consejo de Evaluación. Embajadoras y embajadores. Embajador Ricardo Bosnich-Kusevich, Director de la División de América del Sur del Ministerio de Relaciones Exteriores. Representantes del cuerpo diplomático y de organismos internacionales. Profesor Federico Rojas de Galarreta, coordinador del Programa Sur. Autoridades universitarias, comunidad universitaria, señoras y señores. Agradecemos también a quienes nos están siguiendo a través de nuestras plataformas virtuales y nuestra transmisión en vivo a través del canal de YouTube. Saludamos especialmente el apoyo del Banco de Desarrollo de América Latina, CAF, que a través de la iniciativa Sur ha facilitado esta instancia. Para comenzar, dejo con ustedes al profesor Leonardo Letelier Saavedra, decano de la Facultad de Gobierno.
Bueno, muchísimas gracias. En primer lugar, bienvenido a nuestro invitado estelar, el Secretario General de la Organización de Estados Americanos. Bienvenidos todos los integrantes de la comunidad universitaria que nos acompañan, todos nuestros invitados del Ministerio de Relaciones Exteriores, del Servicio Exterior, alumnos, alumnas y comunidad en general de la Universidad de Chile. Para nosotros, como Facultad de Gobierno, en conjunto con el Instituto de Estudios Internacionales, es un altísimo honor poder ser parte de esta actividad, que es de la mayor importancia, porque está completamente alineada con los objetivos superiores que persigue la Universidad de Chile: la promoción del desarrollo, la profundización de la democracia y la defensa de los derechos humanos. La Facultad de Gobierno, así como también el Instituto de Estudios Internacionales, forman parte de ese propósito general y además están cobijados en este mismo edificio que ha sido inaugurado a partir de este año, y en ese contexto es un privilegio poder contar con un invitado de tan alto nivel para fines de acompañar el inicio de actividades en este edificio, en el cual vamos a estar nuestra facultad, el Instituto de Estudios Internacionales, el Instituto de Estudios de Educación y la Orquesta Sinfónica Nacional. Esas 4 unidades, que son aparentemente diversas, tienen mucho de parecido porque están inmersas en este propósito y en este objetivo superior que siempre ha perseguido la Universidad de Chile, por la vía de no solamente desarrollar investigación y generar docencia de primer nivel, de pre y posgrado, sino que también transmitir ciertos valores muy importantes que han sido fundamentales para el desarrollo del país y para el debate académico en general. Por lo tanto, esta actividad, en la cual la Corporación Andina de Fomento también nos ha dado un apoyo a través del Programa Sur, se inserta en esa línea, en esa trayectoria y en esa tradición que tenemos en nuestra universidad. No quiero extenderme más en las palabras porque nos queda mucho por conversar en esta sesión, pero termino agradeciendo que hayan venido a participar y por cierto, al Secretario General de la OEA le doy mis personales agradecimientos a nombre mío propio y a nombre de nuestra Facultad de Gobierno. Muchísimas gracias.
Muchas gracias, profesor Letelier. A continuación, invitamos a la profesora Dorotea López Giral, directora del Instituto de Estudios Internacionales, a brindarnos un saludo.
Señor Albert Ramdin, secretario general de la OEA, señor Leonardo Letelier, señor Ricardo Bosnick, señora Verónica Huencho, queridos embajadores, cuerpo diplomático, amigas y amigas, y principalmente nuestros estudiantes, para quien hoy tenemos el lujo de recibir al secretario general de la Organización de Estados Americanos. Creo que para el Instituto de Estudios Internacionales, para la Facultad de Gobierno y para la Universidad de Chile es una gran inauguración. Se lo comentábamos al secretario general, qué mejor que empezar en nuestras nuevas instalaciones con una conferencia suya en un momento donde el contexto internacional nos demanda la cooperación, nos demanda fortalecer agendas positivas, y esto es un primer signo del edificio donde vamos a vivir juntos, poder hacer este evento. En el marco del Programa Sur que impulsamos junto con el Banco de Desarrollo de América Latina y el Caribe, que refleja la aspiración de la Universidad de Chile de construir desde la academia, desde una universidad pública, al fortalecimiento de la cooperación y la integración regional. Creemos firmemente, y nuestra rectora así lo ha manifestado en diversas oportunidades, que generar conocimiento crítico, formar capacidades que permitan no solo diseñar políticas más sólidas, sino la integración de personas. Y nosotros somos unos creyentes que la universidad pública tiene un papel, y en eso queremos ponerla también al servicio de este proyecto de agendas positivas. Su presencia nos honra y subraya la importancia de articular un debate sudamericano en una agenda de integración mucho más amplia, por lo cual le agradecemos mucho acompañarnos el día de hoy y enriquecer la visión, sobre todo a nuestros y nuestras estudiantes, a quienes seguramente les va a tocar continuar este camino por la integración y la cooperación. Muchísimas gracias a todas y a todas que nos acompañan hoy, y muchísimas gracias a la Facultad de Gobierno por recibirnos con las primeras sillas en esta instalación, así que muchísimas gracias.
Muchas gracias, profesora López. Ahora, para realizar la presentación del señor Albert Ramdin, dejo con ustedes al profesor Federico Rojas, coordinador del Programa Sur de la Universidad de Chile.
Muchas gracias, muy buenas tardes. Es un honor para mí, en calidad de coordinador del Programa Sur, presentar al invitado de hoy, señor Albert Ramdin, actual Secretario General de la Organización de Estados Americanos. El Secretario General Ramdin nació en Surinam en el año 1958 y ha dedicado más de 3 décadas al servicio público y diplomático. Su trayectoria es amplia y reconocida. Fue asesor en distintos ministerios de su país, representante permanente de Surinam ante la OEA, donde presidió el Consejo Permanente y el Consejo Interamericano para el Desarrollo Integral, y también secretario general adjunto de CARICOM, desempeñando un papel clave en la articulación del Caribe con otros procesos de cooperación regional. Entre 2020 y 2025 se desempeñó como ministro de Relaciones Exteriores de Surinam. En marzo de este año fue elegido por aclamación de los Estados miembros como secretario general de la OEA para el periodo 2025-2030. Al iniciar su mandato, el secretario general Ramdin subrayó que asume con humildad y con el compromiso de construir una OEA más inclusiva, eficaz y orientada a resultados. Destacó que la cooperación hemisférica no puede limitarse únicamente a los Estados, sino que debe involucrar activamente a todos los sectores de la sociedad: gobiernos, sociedad civil, comunidades indígenas, sector privado y especialmente a las y los jóvenes. Este enfoque resulta particularmente relevante frente a los desafíos que enfrenta la región. La fragmentación política y económica de América Latina y el Caribe, junto con la parálisis de los organismos de cooperación e integración regional, debilita la capacidad de los países para actuar de manera coordinada y presentar una voz unida ante los desafíos comunes. Por ello, la visión del secretario general Ramdin, que promueve la inclusión y la cooperación efectiva, adquiere una relevancia central para fortalecer la acción conjunta en el hemisferio. Desde el Programa Sur, impulsado por la Universidad de Chile con el apoyo de CAF, Banco de Desarrollo de América Latina y el Caribe, compartimos plenamente este espíritu. Nuestro objetivo es fortalecer la cooperación y la integración regional, uniendo a la academia, a los responsables de políticas y a la sociedad civil en un esfuerzo común por repensar el futuro regional. Por todo esto, es un privilegio para nosotros recibir hoy al secretario general de la OEA, señor Albert Ramdin, y escuchar su visión sobre los desafíos y oportunidades de la cooperación hemisférica en este nuevo ciclo. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, profesor Rojas. Antes de continuar, les recordamos que nos hagan llegar sus consultas escritas durante la charla a fin de recoger las preguntas con antelación que serán respondidas al final. Sin más, dejo la palabra e invito a este podio al señor Albert Ramdin.
I wanted to say good morning, but it's good afternoon. So just to double check. Bueno, first of all, thank you very much to all of you, especially the students, for being present here. I hope you gain knowledge today, as you do in a university, but also knowledge which you will reflect on in a very critical manner, just to do more with the facts and figures. So thank you very much for being here, and I'm very honored to be present in this beautiful building, a new building, I understand, one of the first activities. It's always good to be in a university environment. That's how I feel. And therefore, it is always my intention to, wherever we go, in whichever country, we do public events. We speak to students, we speak to the media, we speak to members of parliaments, because we need to tell the story about the OES much more and much more in detail. But let me recognize first Professor Leonardo Letelier. Thank you for your words, and thank you for your faculty to invite us and to allow us this opportunity. Professor Dorotea Lopez, thank you very much for your students to be present here as well. Professor Christian Gonzalez, I'm not sure if he's here, but if so, yes, thank you. The Honorable Diputado Erika Nanco, Professor Veronica Figueroa. I understand we have representation from the international community as well, ambassadors and representatives from missions. It means that I'll be careful because one of the things they do is report back. And I want to be sure that I put something in it which does not alert governments, especially member states. We live in difficult times. Ambassador Ricardo Boschnik, Director of the Division of Americas del Sur. Professor Federico Rojas, thank you very much for your words. Other authorities, especially invited guests, and I see some friends also. Georgina and Sousa, thank you very much. I used to be Assistant Secretary General, Deputy Secretary General for 10 years together with Jose Miguel and Sousa. So in many ways, I know Chile reasonably well, I think. And Jorge Heine, good to see you again. We have worked also on many occasions together. And thank you very much for keeping active and writing, because that's so important. It's a message to all our students here. Keep writing, keep reflecting and putting on a piece of paper your thoughts. And I'm in Chile for several activities. One of the most important activities is the conference which we had yesterday and the day before, and that is on election management bodies, electoral observation, one of the most important activities of the OAS. So that is the main reason I'm here, but also officially to thank the Chilean government for the support they have provided me during the campaign. Very strong support from the beginning. And Minister Alberto van Claveren, who is a good friend, I understand he has clear linkages with this university. He has been a great foreign minister for Chile. He's one of the only foreign ministers I could have a private conversation with which nobody else would understand, because we speak Dutch. And it's always great, because we always did that. And everybody else around us would look like, okay, what are they talking about? We didn't tell them. Anyhow, but Alberto is a good friend, and we look forward to his further contribution. Look, this is my first visit to Chile in my capacity as Secretary General of the OAS, but it's not my first visit to Chile. I've been on many occasions in Chile. When we had the anniversary of the Inter-American Democratic Charter, I think it was the 10th anniversary in Valparaiso, in your Congress, I delivered remarks together with then President of the country. So my experience with Chile has always been a very pleasant one and a very positive one. And I think this is something which any country would like to echo. We just visited together with the Secretary of Democracy, your former ambassador, Ambassador Sebastian Krajewicz to the OAS, and our colleague and staff member, Adam Siegel. We visited the Museum on Human Rights, which is very inspiring. And I left a message there which only said this. And it's a sad situation to see this happening also in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. We thought that that kind of accesses to human rights abuses were at least reasonably managed. But this is recent history. So many of you have lived through that. I have gone through the same in Suriname around the same time, in the 90s, 80s. It's not a good experience for any country, but what you have demonstrated as a people is the resilience to object to those kinds of abuses in a forceful way, in a consistent way, not giving up. And I think that's the value which needs to be told, because we should not accept any kind of abuse of human rights, nowhere, certainly not in this hemisphere. We will stand strong and tall and firm with any kind of abuse that is taking place and object to it. It's not only because it's a sad story, but it blocks, it's an obstacle to development, it's an obstacle to maturity of a nation, and we cannot afford that. So that's why we need to continue promoting democracy as a model for governance and nothing else. Rightfully elected by the people, their sovereign right to elect their own leaders. And that is something which we need to take away. So it was a touching experience just now. Now, having said all of that, just to frame that, the Organization of American States is under pressure as any multilateral organization in the world currently. So that's a reality which we accept, which we recognize, not only because of the positions taken by the largest economy, the richest economy in the world, also because of the changing politics in the hemisphere, and I'll speak to that. And those are challenges which we need to face, but by nature, I'm an optimistic person. I feel still very excited, independent of the challenges which we face. It inspires me to do the right thing and to go the right path, simply because there is no other way. We cannot sit still and wait until it resolves itself. So I'll speak to those issues, but I want to start by telling you a little bit about the OAS, insofar you don't know. This whole notion of the Americas as a collection of countries, independent countries, to be together is many, many years old. Even began basically with Simon Bolivar, last 2 centuries. And the notion is still from Simon Bolivar's ideas is to connect all the Americas together, to have one united Americas. Now, that aspiration has not gone. This is how the OAS came into being after a transition from the Pan American Union in 1910. So the OAS, if it did not exist already, it would need to be reinvented because it is necessary, independent of what politicians or political leaders or heads of government say. For me, there is no question about it. The hemisphere needs a political body for intergovernmental dialogue, and preferably everybody around the table. It used to be a table where everybody was around. Regretfully, over the past 10 years, 2 countries have decided, one definitively to leave and the other one still hanging somewhere in between. But it's not an ideal situation to see countries leave a multilateral forum, okay? So that is one of the threats, but it's also one of the challenges which we face, is how do we get back on track to unite the hemisphere through the OAS with all the independent nations present. And why there is a need to be present is simply because in today's world, the majority of our problems, the majority of the issues we are dealing with are cross-border in nature. So how are we going to solve those problems if we don't talk to each other? If we don't have a collectivity to discuss opportunities? It's not going to be possible. No country in this hemisphere, no country, and we can demonstrate that, no country in this hemisphere can solve all the problems which we face today in terms of security, in terms of migration, in terms of education, in terms of trade, in terms of investment, in terms of economic development on their own. It's impossible. Food security, energy security, health security are elements where every country needs to build on. And no country cannot do it alone. So you need to work together. The notion that we must depart from multilateralism, so international cooperation, as indicated by some. There is some skepticism about the value of multilateralism. For a certain part, I do agree with that notion, the skepticism, because we have not demonstrated, I take that lesson, we have not demonstrated that a multilateral system is delivering on the strategic interests of the countries. Not that they're not doing it, we have not been able to demonstrate it. So this is one of the tasks for us, to demonstrate the value, the importance, the relevance of the OAS. This is why I'm here as well, to tell the story about the OAS. We do so many things for many, many countries in the hemisphere, which help the countries to remain on a path of growth and instability. So I'll come back possibly to that. So we have 4 pillars. That is what the Charter of the OAS indicates to us, as adopted in Santa Fe de Bogota in 1948. In 2 years' time, we'll be 80 years old. The 4 pillars are democracy, security, human rights, and integral development. Now, the focus has been very strongly on democracy and human rights. In fact, the Charter speaks about 2 other concepts which we should look at seriously. And that is, the objective of the OAS is to create peace and prosperity. Peace and prosperity. That is what the people of the Americas are looking for as well, for nothing else. Peace and prosperity. That's, for me, is that a guiding factor. So these 4 pillars are also the 4 pillars which we have focused on in the reorganization of the OAS since we came in. As was mentioned, our task is to make the OAS more relevant, more visible, more transparent, more efficient, much more focusing on delivery of the mandates. So there is an institutional reform going on, which we have started, and it was last Friday was my 100th day, 100th day. It looks so much longer that we are working, but 100 days, but we have done so much in those 100 days. Internal communication has been improved between departments, between secretariats, as well as collectively with the leadership. We are showcasing the OAS much more in the media, in tweets, in press releases. We are participating in meetings much more effectively. I'm the second one who participated in this conference here. Jose Miguel was the first one to do that in the meeting. And it is such an important meeting, but we have to show and demonstrate leadership. So we have been doing a lot of things internally to create more efficiency and more internal consistency, so that the silos which were there, everybody operated on their own, is not happening anymore. It's critical for any organization, and we'll continue. We have changed the organizational structure. I had preferred 4 secretariats, member states. You know how it is. You negotiate and you listen to member states. They tell you what they want. Ultimately, they are the boss. It's like a company. If we with the OAS, I will be the CEO, and they will be the shareholders, and I have to listen to the shareholders. So they told me, no, we still want legal affairs as a secretariat. It stays at the secretariat. But the other 3 are very prominently present. Democracy, multidimensional security, integral development, and human rights as a separate autonomous body, the Inter-American Human Rights Commission. So that is the OAS, and it is a necessary multilateral framework. The context, the content of multilateralism, we need to reflect on. And we're not going to be able to finish that discussion here. But in my view, and I said this in 2015 when I left the OAS, possibly we need, and I did not know what would happen today, but what I said then in 2015 is still true. We may need a new type of multilateralism in the Americas. And we have to discuss with academia what is the content of that new multilateralism. Because the world has changed, the politics have changed, the dynamics of interstate relationships have changed. The dynamics in the world have changed, and we have to take account of that. So the definition, and we'll have this discussion with academia and other thinkers as well, is the new multilateralism I'm thinking of will continue with the same principles. One country, one vote, everybody equal. But how do you combine bilateral relationships, which are pretty dominant now, with multilateralism, and what kind of dynamic that will result in? On the one hand, countries want to go bilateral, that's their nationalistic approach, but on the other hand, they see the benefit of a global cooperation framework. The OAS is not the only institution that has this problem. Look at the United Nations only. The role of the United Nations Security Council is weakened. We have 2 global wars at the moment, 2 global wars. The one in Ukraine, which everybody thought it would last a couple of months, is already more than 3 years going on. So, and nobody thought that we would have wars anymore since 1945. We thought that period was over. Open wars. Today, even worse, because with social media and all these gadgets which we have off of telephone, you can see live how people are getting killed, how buildings are being bombed. And I'm surprised that there is little care about this from a humanitarian, human perspective. We just accept it as a given. It happens, so it happens. That's not the attitude we need. So we have the war in Eastern Europe, we have the conflict in Gaza, in the Middle East, much more complex. But both of them take a toll on the global scene, in politics, in economics, in finances. And again, we need to look at that as well. But the global environment has changed, has an impact on the Western Hemisphere, because we all are part of a global economy. So what I'm trying to say here is that we need to recognize that the type of multilateralism which we had between 1945 and maybe 5 years ago is not there anymore. The global framework of international law, international humanitarian law, is not effective anymore. Otherwise, these wars would have been dealt with a long time ago. Diplomacy is not as effective as it used to be, because otherwise, behind the scenes, solutions would be found. We have seen that recently, where at the highest political levels, commitments are made, and within a week thereafter, the whole schemes looks like not feasible. So those are realities which we face today. It's not the same anymore as it used to be. So, and you know what the danger is? That other countries will see in this a reason and possibly some kind of freedom they will acquire to do the same in their own region. Because nobody cares, nobody responds. There is no punishment, there is no penalty on this kind of behavior globally. And I say this because in our own hemisphere, we have countries who would wish to do the same with neighboring countries. And that's a danger. There was a point where they thought that they could do that easily because nobody responded globally. So why not? Let's do what I want to do. That is not a good thing. So we need that multilateral framework to avoid these things from happening. That's a new environment which we live in. So we will have to talk about multilateralism. I still believe and I still work towards a different approach when it comes to the Americas. And while we are encountering the same reflection of a fragmented, divisive global scene, also in our own Americas, there is a lot of division between politics, between politicians, between leaders. sometimes ideological, sometimes, in my view, not with serious arguments, but we will need to respond in a different way to these issues. I'm not a person who will look at the negative. I'm not a person who focuses on what is not achievable. I don't put things on an agenda where I know the problem will not be solved. I only put things on an agenda, and the Permanent Council knows this. There's a way to do this. We don't put anything on the Permanent Council agenda when we know that the end game will be more division, more animosity, and no progress. What I do instead, and this is what I did so far, is I speak with member states up front. We engage. We engage collectively as regional groups or individually. Today, as we speak, we are trying to solve a problem with regard to Haiti. And I'm making calls, individual member states. We talk to them up front because we want a solution when it comes to the table where everybody can say, yes, we are on the same page. That is what happened with the organizational chart, the new organizational chart of the OAS, which was adopted also by acclamation because you do the work before. This is part of a new multilateralism. Don't let everything come down on one agenda when it is going to fail. We don't need failures. So my objective, apart from the strengthened communication with member states and listening to them seriously, we can disagree. We can agree to disagree, but at least talk to each other. At least talk to each other. At least have an opportunity to voice your opinion. And that's what they experience, because there's a respect. Member states need to be respected. And we're not going to agree on everything, but at least we will make progress in terms of minimizing animosity. So that is one aspect of my approach. The second one is that if I would focus only on the negative, on the division, to build consensus, I will never get there, because that is quite a difficult task. The divisiveness which is out there will change, because in 2025 and 2026 we will have, some of them passed already, 18 national elections and many more other elections, but 18 out of the 32 is almost 55% of the OAS. 55-60% of the OAS. The political landscape in the hemisphere will change. Some of them will continue, some will change. We have to be cognizant of that fact. There is a new environment going to develop in less than 2 years. How do we deal with that? So I propose that we use every opportunity to present a positive, forward-looking agenda which will benefit not governments, not the political leaders, but the people of the Americas. Because ultimately, it's about that. We have also that instruction. That's why I mentioned at the beginning, the Charter speaks also about peace and prosperity to the people of the Americas. Not to the governments or individual politicians. It speaks to the peace and prosperity for the people of the Americas. That is what the Charter is about. So if we focus on that, the only way we can do that is present a positive, forward-looking agenda which will create more peace, more prosperity. And let me tell you one thing, while I'm excited and optimistic and upbeat about it, I'm also the first one to say it's a very difficult task to achieve. It's going to take time. So what we need to do, if you're standing alone in terms of this agenda to develop, you find partners within societies. What we know as a term, whole of a society approach, where we see leaders work with civil society, the private sector, the trade unions, and others, we need a whole of America's approach. We work with every single country, every single country. We work with the private sector of the Americas because they have a role to play. Because the prosperity part is not government's work primarily. They create the rules and the context and the framework, but the jobs are created by businesses. The investments are done by businesses and banks. That is what we are working with. And we are going to have those meetings in the OAS with the private sector, the hemispheric private sector. So we find new avenues, we find new partners. So that's one of them. Civil society, we're engaging very strongly with civil society. I don't always agree with them, but again, the principle is a simple one. Have an honest debate. Have an honest debate. Youth groups as well. I'm going to speak in the UN just now to the youth, people, the young people of the world next couple of weeks. We engage with every single part of society. And that is what can bring some change. But it must be a positive change, because how long are we going to stay with problems which we cannot resolve and there is no progress as such? Ultimately, the people of the Americas will get fed up, so to speak. Also with the inter-American system. And we don't want that to happen. So we may not achieve everything what we want. If I achieve 30, 40%, we have made good progress. So I'm very realistic. For those who think I'm upbeat and I'm unrealistic, I'm not. But I'm always happy with a smile to say that there is work to be done and that we will carry it out. And we have great institutions. The inter-American system, and I speak about the inter-American system on purpose, not about the OAS alone. We have focused on the OAS far too much. The OAS is at the head of a top of many institutions that do great work. The OAS has great people working on these issues. They were undervalued. Now they're getting the value. The morale in the OAS for the past years, and this is a study done not by us, independently by others, was 36% of a positive morale. That is how they were working. In a couple of months, we'll do a new study and see if we gone up, but I'm sure it will be gone up because we are working with the teams at the OAS. These are the small things to make an institution light up again and be trusted and be recognized. And it's not only about the politics of the hemisphere. It's not only about the politics. It's also about concrete deliverables on security, on development, on climate change, fighting climate change. It's also about strengthening electoral systems and all those things which will benefit the people of the Americas, because you can fight at least some of the things. We have a couple of crisis situations, I'll speak to that. But what I'm saying is, let's change course and look at a new horizon, which I'm going to present at the Summit of the Americas with figures, because this hemisphere can grow, can become more relevant in the whole world. 6 members of the G20 are members of our community. Our footprint globally is relatively small compared to other regions. How is that possible? A country so rich, a hemisphere so rich in people, in history, and in natural resources. Enormously rich, with the growth potential of the middle class. Why don't we focus on those things rather than focus on the politics of between leaders or between countries or on border conflicts? Those things have to continue to be resolved, but should not be high on the agenda. Let's focus on how do we get the Americas working together in such a way that we bring more peace and more prosperity. That will mitigate, if we have more prosperity in the hemisphere, it will mitigate the need for migration, which is a problem for certain countries, so we serve the strategic interests of that country. It will mitigate organized crime, which every country is dealing with illegal drug trade and trafficking of people and all those things. It will create more stability, political stability in country, and hopefully better governance. So the reverse is also true, is that if we focus on development, on peace and prosperity, it will support democracy and human rights. It's not the other way always around. We have focused very strongly. It's a different paradigm of thinking. Let's focus on giving the people what they want. They want a job. You think the people of the Americas care about all these fights between leaders? They don't. What they want is a job. They want a steady income. They want a peaceful environment. They want to relax and recreate. And they want a future for the children. That's what they want. And leaders should understand that. I have said this publicly, so I don't mind saying it here again. It's a challenge because not all leaders are happy with what I say. But that is the way to go if you want to have prosperity. I see this hemisphere growing as a global power, but then with the right policies that we put in place. So there are 4 things that need to be done in that context. We need to make sure that we trade more with it. No, let me start with the most important one. We do not know each other in the hemisphere. Really. There's little contact between the people of the Americas. How many people have gone to the Caribbean in this room? Apart from Jorge. I mean, it's a sliver. How many people from the Caribbean has come to the South? Little. While they are so close, Central America and the Caribbean, they don't communicate. Language is an issue, maybe. But how much language training is being done? How much tourism? If the people of the Americas do not know each other, how do you build trust between peoples? So what I'm proposing is connectivity, the first one. Connectivity digital, by sea to do more trade, by air to have more tourism, and by road so that you can visit each other. That connectivity is going to be critical to mobilize all the people assets, the natural assets, and the financial assets to support our own development. How much of financial investments are taking place? How many banks from the South are investing in Suriname and Guyana, which are the 2 power nations coming up? At this point, it's Southeast Asia and European companies and American companies. That's it, who are operating there. There's great potential for South American capital to be invested in our own countries in the region. Keep capital and trade among ourselves. You'll see how much prosperity that will bring. It will create jobs, sustainable job for a long term, and it will create that political stability that you wish. But it has to be an inspiration, it has to be a vision for the Americas. I'm going to speak about this with figures to showcase how less we know each other. And we need to work on that. We need to have, COPA did a great job in connecting the Americas and the Caribbean, I must say. I see more people from the Caribbean going to Cusco and to some other places, but there's so much more. It's not Miami. The end of the decolonization process in a legal way has happened in most of the cases, 95%, but mentally, it's not. Because we still go to Europe. Most of the Surinamese people who want to study go to Amsterdam or somewhere else in Europe. Most of the British people go to Toronto, Canada, or to London. Why not in this region? Why not in our own countries go and study? Most of the Latin Americans seek Miami or Madrid or Portugal or Lisbon. That's a reality, but that's because we have not departed from that colonial past mentally. And that has to change. If we want to have one united hemisphere, it must be by working together. And that's what I'm asking for. Let's work together not on what we cannot achieve, but on what we can realize and put together for the future. That's all what we need. And I think the potential is there. I can go into details if you look at the countries with rare minerals. It's going to become a strategic asset, but at the same time a strategic threat, because other countries want it. When are we going to see the benefit of creating our own sophisticated technology-based industries. We don't have even one pharmaceutical large company in the Americas, in Latin America. When COVID-19 hit, many of our countries were the last to stand in line to be able to purchase the vaccines. Even if they had money, even if they had placed the orders before, the power play was the largest countries was getting it first, because we did not have our own supply. So nearshoring and local production, and with local I mean hemispheric production, is important. The same issues will play in terms of food security, health security, and energy security. If we do not have a strategy how we secure those for the future, we'll continue to depend on other regions because we have not created wealth for ourselves. So if politicians start thinking like that, you'll see more collaboration, more collaboration. But you have to demonstrate the value, and that's what we're doing now, is to demonstrate that there is a different path forward where we can work. And I know time is running, so I'm getting the signals, but I'm very passionate about it. There's so much more to say. Let me share with you the more practical things which we have currently. Apart from building a strong institution like the OAS, which will generate hopefully more trust with political leaders, but mostly with the people, the Inter-American Human Rights Commission is doing a great job. Every institutional capability can be criticized. I told them also a couple of things. They are autonomous. I'm not interfering in their work, but there are a couple of things they can do better. But it is a useful instrument, it's a necessary instrument, and it has proven to be beneficial. In each area, integral development, security, and democracy, we will increase activities. We will do much more. But there are some issues beyond the institutional, and I've called on member states not only to ask us to be engaged in institutional reform, but also that they engage in political reform, because the political reform side is their business. And I'm going to showcase them again with figures, what it cost, what they're doing, and the inefficiencies in that operation. The political functions are not managed well. And really, I can tell you, it's unbelievable how many meetings we have with very little output. And I'll give you one example. The Permanent Council is supposed to meet twice a month to discuss issues of the OAS. It's the highest day-to-day management council. Twice a month. That should be in a normal mathematics 24 times a year. They have met so far, only about over 2025, 86 times. And then I'm asking, okay, but what did you achieve? And there is little. It's not a complaint to the member state. I'm saying member states should be also aware. And I'm speaking always like this, frank, to member states. They should always also be aware that what they do is not efficient. Again, these are things which we need to talk about. If we let it go, it's not going to change, and it will not benefit anybody. Now, there are a couple of issues that we, on the political side, and the political agenda will get more complicated in the coming months. As I said, in 2 years' time, the political landscape may be quite different than what we have today. We'll have to adapt. We'll have to see how we work with that. There is a degree of unpredictability in foreign relations, in interstate relations. There's a degree of skepticism, which we hope to get rid of. But a couple of countries do require specific attention. Haiti is important to us, not only out of solidarity, not only because Haiti is the third Caribbean country that was a founding member of the OAS, but simply because the people of Haiti are going through a process which we would not condone anywhere in the world, and why would we want to condone it here in our own region. So Haiti, we have developed Haiti as a high priority, And we have done a lot of things already in terms of a roadmap with 5 pillars, focusing on the security aspects in many different shapes and forms, humanitarian assistance, political dialogue, the preparation for elections, and then reconstruction and rebuilding of the economy. It's a very large-scale exercise. The cost of it at this point seems to be around the 3-point-something billion. Again, we don't need to realize everything, but we need to work on this. So Haiti is high priority. And many countries have assisted Haiti, including this country, with special representatives appointed. I can go in depth on Haiti, but if you have questions, let me know. CARICOM plays a critical role. We have the coordination with the United Nations as well. We're waiting for the UN resolution to be adopted, hopefully this month in the UN. And I think legitimately the OAS can play a coordinating role, which was absent. There are 2 other countries which require also from the perspective of the goals of the OAS attention. One is Venezuela, and the other one is Nicaragua. Nicaragua is out of the OAS. It doesn't mean that we cannot monitor the developments in Nicaragua. Much more complex, possibly, than other countries, especially where we have no presence anymore or no direct communication. Venezuela is the position of the OAS is divided because countries are divided about their assessment about the situation in Venezuela. Some countries are recognizing the current political actors in Venezuela as the legitimate government and president. Others are not. A large part has taken a middle-of-the-road position like, let us see first the outcome of the elections and then we'll determine. So in that framework, for me to say something about Venezuela is limited. As I said, I listen to the member states. They have made statements. They have made several statements. And they have that sovereign right to do so. So in that sense, there are certain elements which we can share. But my job is to find solutions going forward. Making statements is important. I recognize that. There is a political signal to be given there. But it doesn't resolve the problem. It doesn't provide a solution. And I'm very practical. I need solutions. We can have 10 statements made, 10 very harsh statements, characterizing whatever name you want to give to the leaders. Does it change anything? It doesn't change anything. So my job is to find solutions much more in a diplomatic way, behind the scenes, and we are doing that. We have to find a way forward. There are several players. The United States is very active with naval assets in the region. We'll see how that works out. Pressure is important. We have the different interests at the side of the opposition. The fragmentation on the government side seems to be present as well. So it's not an easy landscape to maneuver and to understand exactly how you want to change, but change must come. And I hope that that change will be peaceful. And some believe that it's possible, some believe it's not. Countries have also different attitudes. Some countries are engaging in a lot of pressure, but they're looking also at business. So, you know, it's kind of where do they stand exactly? So for us as an OAS Secretariat, leadership is to keep monitoring it. The Inter-American Human Rights Commission is very clear, and the reports are supported. There are arbitrary detentions which we denounce. There are human rights abuses. There are people who are missing and not to be found, or we don't know their whereabouts at least. Those things cannot happen. And I have said publicly, when it comes to the principles of the OAS, we will speak out. And the principles are here clearly. Ill-prepared or elections held where they have excluded candidates, we will condemn those. That is not the right way to do it. Where there is abuse and arbitrary detentions, we need to condemn those because that goes against the human rights principles. At the same time, let us try to help. Let us try to convince those who have the powers that they should stop doing those things or at least release people. That is the more practical approach, because that is ultimately the solution. And I know that this is not easy, but that is on Venezuela. Nicaragua is a little bit more complex because, as I said, the government there is more ingrained in all the sectors of society, especially the three powers. So it becomes much more difficult to engage and to find change. But we are speaking with the opposition there, at least parts of the opposition. We're speaking also with the opposition groups in Venezuela as well. So we will try to find solutions going forward. It's not going to be a quick solution, but it must happen. And we have other problems in the hemisphere, in political sense. We have a couple of problems in Central America. We do have issues in the Caribbean in terms of development and the dangers that come with that. High debt burden. I mean, there is a variety of problems. And you know that one of the characteristics of the hemisphere, I should have mentioned this in the beginning, is that we are representing an enormous diversity in the hemisphere. No country is the same, but the regions are not the same. Latin America's interests is different from Caribbean interests. Central American interest is different from South American interest, or from Canada, or from the US. Those are the 5 regions, as we call them. So the OAS is not to cater only for one region, but for all 5 regions. And that is what we're trying to do. It's not easy. So for the Caribbean, development issues are critical. And we will work with them on finding solutions going forward. Their priorities are economic development and the climate crisis. Those are real existential problems that they have. So I think for the OAS, working with the member states, with the governments, with the different sectors in society is important, but we are going to work much stronger with the Inter-American system. And the Inter-American system is the Inter-American Development Bank, the Pan-American Health Organization, and IICA, the Inter-American Institute for Agriculture. These are the 4 principal bodies in the Inter-American system, but there are more where we can work with. We're going to mobilize that. We started already. For the first time since long, we have had 2 meetings already with the heads of the Inter-American institutions, not at the level of technicians or representatives, at the heads level. So next week I'm meeting with the president of the IDB to talk about how we're going to spend 200 million grant funding for Haiti, for instance. Would not have happened before. We are mobilizing the Inter-American system to deliver, because we cannot do everything. We are not a development agency. We don't have the money. But there are others. We're going to mobilize the banks. CAF is one of our partners. They're setting up an office in one of our buildings. But the Caribbean Development Bank or the Central Bank of Central America as well, the Development Bank of Central America, all these institutions we mobilize to help us execute that mandate. The last one is a much more political one, to make sure that this vision of a new agenda for the Americas, which, as I said, during the Summit of the Americas in Punta Cana, Dominican Republic will present, we need to have partners. The OAS alone saying this is not going to help. So we are mobilizing the political sub-regional organizations like CARICOM, SICA, CIECA, CELAC, the Association of Caribbean States, together with the OAS to share the same values, the same ideas for the future. We all have to be, and so far, I must say we're working pretty well together. We have not met face-to-face as yet, but that will happen in January next year. So there is a lot of things on our plate at the moment, but I see the OAS as the premier, the most important multilateral forum where member states can come. And even if they left, we'll keep in touch with them so that there is an input, and at some point we'll need to, hopefully, maybe not in my term, get them back around the table. Last one, Cuba. Cuba is a member of the OAS. So they are not an active member, but it is up to the Cuban government to become part of the OAS. They have to make the first step. It's not that it's going to be left alone. We will keep engaging. In fact, I engaged with them already. They're not feeling anything of joining the OAS actively for now. There may be a time when they will, but the Inter-American Human Rights Commission is also very active in that regard. But I would like to see them start participating in some committees and so on. They have their reason why they don't want to come. And I know that, and I understand that also. But it is up to Cuba. So that's a little bit less, that's a little bit of different story than the situation with regard to Venezuela and Nicaragua. There are many political challenges in Central America with many elections coming up. We have the same in South America with elections in many countries, from Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Peru. I think those are the ones. On the short term, we have, these are major elections and very important for the future of the Americas. And of course, we'll see what the developments are in the United States of the Americas with midterm coming up and the policies that they will have. So that is the story. The OAS is there with a lot of new energy, and the Assistant Secretary General, I should mention for this first time, is a female from Colombia, Ambassador Laura Gil. We work very well together, and that's a collective leadership. But this vision of going forward towards Americas that is more prosperous, more peaceful, based on what we can achieve, is a vision that that we have and we'll stick to. And ultimately, hopefully, it will work to the benefit of the people of the Americas. I think I'm out of my time. Yeah. Let me see if I missed anything critical. And let us not underestimate the changes which are taking place in the world, because they affect all of us, especially where one of the largest players is also part of this hemisphere. I haven't spoken about the geopolitics behind all the global challenges which we face, but that will come maybe in the discussion. I'll end here, and I want to again thank you very much for the opportunity to share with you the OAS. I want you to keep one message here. The OAS is a life institution, is alive and well, is not on any kind of way going back, and the OAS is valuable to every single country of this hemisphere. And we're going to put that in money terms so that you can see it on our web pages, how much each country is benefiting from the OAS. That's the only way to demonstrate that the return on investment, and the investment is the contribution, it pays off. It pays off. And for me, there is no doubt there, but we did not tell the story. That's the problem. And we have to tell the story more and more. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions. If there are difficult questions, Sebastian is here to answer those. Please.
Agradecemos la contundente y analítica descripción que nos ha hecho el señor Albert Ramdin, y por temas de tiempo solo le haremos 2 preguntas.
Okay, I spoke too long.
So, Mr. Secretary General, what is the job of the youth on the regional context?
Oh, that's a very easy one. The youth has to become the right political leaders. in all seriousness, the youth can make a difference. Because the youth, in terms of their values and norms and the way they operate, I see it with my own daughter. Sometimes we don't see eye to eye, simply because it's a generational issue. But the youth is living in another generation. Let's have one, respect for that, try to understand them, but also ask you to remain engaged with the responsibility as a serious and responsible citizen of your community. You can be a leader in different ways. It doesn't need to be a politician. You can be a leader in private sector, you can be a cultural leader, you can be a leader in your own community, but have the right values to execute that. And if you can do that, and that has nothing to do with what you have studied, okay? It's just the mindset you have to have that you want to contribute to a better society. That's all what I'm asking, is to take up your responsibility. In the end, it will depend on you and not on us. So that is your responsibility going forward. It's great if you can be a political leader with the right mindset to drive us through this new time frame which is coming up. And it is going to change very fast. Artificial intelligence will make our societies totally different in less than 5 years. And we do not understand it, maybe, but they do. So better manage that well. Otherwise, the society will be looking quite different.
The second question is, amid the political disparities in the region, how can fragmentation be avoided?
No, that's the whole thing. I recognize the fragmentation, I recognize the divisions, but the divisions are based on issues which partly are ideological and partly temporary in terms of the personalities which we have in our hemisphere. It's in fact a ridiculous thing that personality traits are jeopardizing cooperation because leaders don't like each other for whatever reason. I mean, look at the language which is being used by leaders to address each other. That's not a very mature way to do it. Not up to me to say that. They should draw that conclusion themselves. So the only way we can avoid further fragmentation is to focus on the positive, on to showcase that we have areas where we can work together and we can make progress. And that's what we're trying to identify, the areas. And I can tell you, and most leaders will agree, bring prosperity back in the Americas by engaging the private sector, everybody will agree with that. All of the leaders, I'm sure. Because how they will tell their people, I don't agree with prosperity in our countries. That's a wrong message for a politician to tell. That's your reason not to be re-elected or to be elected. So there are messages which we can break, and I hope what recent developments make that hope a little bit less, that in Punta Cana we can have that view. But we will work with the political scenery which is there, and I will do my utmost best to present an agenda which is going to be beneficial to everybody in this hemisphere, because it's based on a constructive, forward-looking approach to the benefit of the people of the Americas.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank
Secretary General. Con este aplauso agradecemos la disposición del señor Ramdin y les invitamos a disfrutar de un café en el piso 8 de este edificio. Agradecemos su participación. Que tengan una linda tarde.